Welcome to Love Byte.
My husband and I are a military family. Been married 3 years, but together 7. He's deployed right now to a pretty calm location with no combat and short work days and weekends off. Currently, I live alone in our home, and we're stationed overseas. He's set to return here in a few months. For context, it's nice, in a way, to have him deployed. I have the home to myself to present it the way I like. I don't have to rub his back every night the way he likes. I have no meals to cook unless I want to. And because he's not here, I don't find or feel any crumbs or dipping tobacco on my sheets. But it does get lonely here sometimes. Right now, I'm alone in this foreign place. But I try to make the best of it because it's beautiful. My husband isn't really there for me emotionally the way I'd like him to be. But I get by, and for the most part, I try to be patient. Generally, he is very loving and affectionate. But he doesn't like to talk. He doesn't like to be bothered with much outside of his job. He doesn't like to plan for the future or strategize in terms of his career. He doesn't like to talk about finances and has made a few financial pitfalls. Last year, he bought 2 cars he couldn't afford, insisting that he'd sell them for a profit. He never tried to sell, and the cats are sitting in parking lots out here, growing rust. But we all make financial mistakes. When he was here, he had a hard time being here for me emotionally. I like to explore new places, go for walks, and spend time with people I love. He outright refused to do those things with me for a long time, and when I'd ask him, he'd get upset and talk about his job. Things got better, and he started taking me out some, but he can still be this way with me. He prefers that I don't go for my daily walks. I stay home, rub his back, and watch TV or movies with him until he falls asleep. In a lot of ways, this deployment is a great break from that chaos. For a while, he seemed happier out there with a different group of people from other units. But things have apparently taken a turn. This past week, I asked if he would spare time and talk with me for a few minutes later in the day, as I'd received awful news about a close family member that I needed to talk through. He said sure, and the day went on. But he never offered up a set time. He got off work early that day and told me he was going to take a nap, and when push came to shove, he flaked on talking at all, saying he wasn't feeling good. The next day, I checked in on him and broached the topic of us talking as planned, and he told me he felt he was going through depression. That a lot of dudes out there were going through something similar, and that he could go and do things, but talking was taking a lot out of him. I pivoted, tried to encourage him, and asked if there was anything I could do to help. He told me sending funny videos would help and that he enjoyed seeing photos and videos I was taking of my life out here, so I sent some of those along, but he didn't really engage with it much. The week went on like this, with very little communication on his part. I would get bits and pieces, and he would go out with colleagues to eat, have drinks, and spend time after work. But he didn't talk to me and wouldn't share what might be going on with him internally. I told him this hurt my feelings and that I didn't feel like he was prioritizing his relationship with me, specifically during a time when I really needed to talk. Cut to this past weekend. My husband and I did talk a bit Saturday evening. It was a short phone conversation about channel passwords. At the end of the conversation, I'd again told him that I felt frustrated and sad because he wasn't really communicating with me. My husband told me he understood and that he loved me. We hang up, and I feel glad we got to talk and that he could understand where I was coming from. I call it a night Saturday night and fall asleep haphazardly, forgetting to text him goodnight. It's Sunday morning, and I wake up, and my husband hasn't texted. His phone is actually off. It remains off for most of the day. I text him good morning and go about my day, and hours later he texts good morning. I asked him how his night went. Usually, when his phone dies overnight, there's been drinking involved. He's fallen asleep and forgotten to charge his phone. Stuff like that. There's radio silence on his end, and then it starts to hit me that just last night, he told me he could understand where I was coming from with my frustrations with him. But he's just continuing to fail to communicate with or prioritize us. I tell him I'm feeling a little weird about all of this. He texts me back a little bit later and is like, "Give me a few minutes to wake up, and I'll give you the rundown about last night." 2 hours go by and nothing. Then he tells me, actually, that he had an accident, last night, not the car kind, and used the bathroom, unsure number 1 or number 2 on himself, on his bed, and on his rug. He tells me he's spent the last bit of time trying to clean that up and that he feels awful about it. I tell him I'm so sorry that this is happening and that it sounds terrible. But I add that it has nothing to do with what's been going on between us. He gets upset and says, "Yeah, I'm going through some things right, but I'll be sure to sit and take a look at how you've been feeling." I tell him that feels like a slap in the face response. Then he tells me he wants some space. These words really trigger me because, 1, he tends to ask for space at the slightest hint of conflict between us, but he never, ever offers up a time for re-engagement to sort through our issues. For him, space can take days or weeks if left unchecked. 2, I just feel so beyond let down by his shutting down for the umpteenth time, right when I'm airing out valid concerns. This is the part that I'm not proud of. I feel deeply ashamed and responsible for my actions, and at the same time I feel so upset and righteous. I call him nonstop for 2 hours, demanding that he talk to me. I text him message after message, imploring him to pick up the phone. I tell him not to speak to me for the rest of the deployment, and then I'm begging him to just talk with me for 5 minutes. It's chaos. And I've been doing this for about 2 hours straight. He blocks me on my iPhone but keeps me unblocked on WhatsApp. And he just lets the phone ring and ring, which baffles me. In hindsight, he might have been letting it ring to show his buddies how crazy his wife is. Or to have documented evidence of how crazy, unhinged, and disrespectful of boundaries I can be, just in case we split and get a divorce. Whatever the reason, he lets me keep calling and calling until after midnight his time and 2 a.m. my time. And this is where we're at. How do I recover from such a messed up thing that I've done? I feel so bad for ruining this man's night and potentially fucking up his Monday morning. And I also feel so frustrated that he doesn't care about me. I feel hurt. And I also feel like I lack self-respect or love for myself. How do I recover from all of these hurt feelings and shame I have over what I've done? You know what I hate? I hate that this fuck-up relationship I have with this guy can sometimes make me so desperate. Why do I care and try with someone who is soiling themselves in drunken stupors and actively avoiding having solid communication with me? I feel so bad about myself this morning. I feel alone in my relationship and afraid to just be here, alone with myself. How do I make things right, first with myself and later with him? Despite his pissy, poor treatment of me, I do deeply feel that I owe him an apology for calling like that and not respecting his space. That's not who I want to be. But is this who I am? It's what I did in my moment of weakness. How do I recover from this?